Hi and welcome to Dynamics Update. Today it's me, Johan Persson, and my colleague Gustav Sumblad. Hello, Gustav.
Hello, Johan.
Hi.
How are you tonight?
Yes, I'm good. It's hectic, lot to do and stuff.
Yeah.
And you?
Yeah, same here. Same here. It's a lot to do. We just got a new puppy in the family as well, so now it's a lot of kids and a lot of dogs running around at home, and a lot to do in the dynamics world. So I have my hands full.
Yes. So we are today going to do like a special edition episode. We have said that a lot of times, but we have not really gotten around to doing that many of these. But the reason for this is that this summer, before the summer, Microsoft released a blog post. And the blog post is called Announcing Comprehensive Sovereign Solutions Empowering European Organizations.
The title says it all.
Yes, of course. There will, of course, be a link for all of you people who want to spend a Friday night reading a blog post about Sovereign Clouds. I will add it to the show notes. But the reason for this is that, so we have had discussions about GDPR and about sovereignty, and we've had previously had a data center in Germany that was isolated from Microsoft because for legal reasons we have not we shouldn't have like public organizations in like Europe, a US data center and so on. And then we have this Schrems guy who always comes and discusses legal issues with data centers from the US companies and so on. So I thought it would be a nice thing to, first of all, just like do a quick recap of like data centers, how we should choose a data center and so on. And then at the end, a little cliffhanger, we will go through this blog post and just discuss what is coming. Small disclaimer, we are not lawyers. We don't do legalese that much. But also the information from Microsoft for right now regarding Sovereign Cloud is quite sparse. So there will be some like just discussions what this might lead to for our customers and so on.
Yeah.
So first of all, when it comes to choosing your data center, when we're talking about F&O, you can choose two data centers. You choose a primary data center and a fallback data center in case everything goes south and you need to fail over somewhere. And from my end, I have always recommended West Europe as the primary data center and North Europe, that is UK, as the fallback data center. And I know that there is usually a lot of discussion regarding latency, performance and stuff. I can, from my end, I think I've done like 10 or 12 implementations all in all. I have never had a discussion about latency to a data center. And we usually do implementations for customers that have legal entities in like Europe, US, Asia, spread out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And we usually, in almost every single case, we recommend one single instance, which means you need to choose two data centers. You need to use one data center as your primary, even though you have companies all over the world.
There are solutions to it, right? And I mean, there are other options as well, depending on if you use commerce, you can use scale units and so forth. So there are like, I share that opinion as well. I haven't run into the latency issues. There are a lot of like choices you have to make. Like I've run into, let's say, instances where you need to deploy some Fabric capacity, and it just happens that the guys who spun up your Power BI or Fabric instance, they selected a different region than the other, where you have your Dynamics instance.
Yes.
Some issues, right? Because not all fancy UIs and portals honor this. I think it was on CE side. I'm not sure that you might know this one, but you could select Europe, but you could not select North and West Europe. So there was some indication there, right, by the common issues. But those were more like practical issues. You can always solve that by just deploying a SKU in Azure and choosing the correct data center. So ways around it. But you're right. I haven't run into the latency issue, and maybe to reiterate that neither you or I are legal counsels here. So anything we say, you need to confirm on your end.
Yeah.
But I mean, apart from the sovereign cloud discussion that we're going to jump into, I mean, this issue has, especially in Europe, you and I mainly work with Scandinavian like companies, but of course global implementations. But our neighbor country, Norway, which is a fantastic country, so fantastic that they decided not to be part of the European Union, right? So there's some legal hassles here, and especially in retail, you have a lot of different fiscal registrations, and it's all down at least in my mind. I try to steer clear of these discussions because I'm not a lawyer, but they always come back to haunt me because it's always like an interpretation. Someone interprets this law, but the system must run in a local data center, and it's like, yeah, that's not possible. You can't deploy this in Sweden right now. You can't deploy a finance operations instance, at least not in Sweden right now. So it's not possible. But if you ask another company or another lawyer, they interpret this like, no, you have to have access to it within those boundaries. And it kind of, you see, it's a lot of interpretations of the written statements, right? But it all boils down to where do you need to store your data, where can you who has access to your data, and so forth.
Yeah, and I mean, that's especially if we talk like state governed data and so on, then you are absolutely in legal territory. But I have also realized that for most of the customers that I have done implementations for, when it comes down to it, and when we talk to the actual lawyers, I mean, everyone has a gut feeling that this requires this. We have certain requirements that we need to adhere to. But when you, in the end, when you go and talk to lawyers at the end, you will actually, in most cases, you will get that if as long as you're within Europe, you are okay. There are as you said, there are certain things that you need to handle when it comes to like receipt for in-store customers and stuff, and when it comes to managing credit card numbers and stuff, that might end up in situations where it's different. And as you said, you shouldn't listen to us when it comes to legal matters, but in most cases, I mean, just anecdotally, in most cases we've ended up in a situation where West Europe is perfectly fine to work in.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And so the next part here is Europe versus like the US, and this has been a discussion basically since GDPR. Are we allowed to store customer data in Europe, in a US owned data center? And that's where Max Schrems comes in, and he has had this discussion for basically all of the different iterations of the laws governing how European companies should store data in US owned data centers. And every time that someone has said this is fine, now we can finally do it, then he comes and says no, it's not, because it won't work. And I mean, you could basically push it to its maximum and argue that as long as we have peace, then we will probably honor laws. But if we are not in peacetime, then all of these laws basically goes out the window anyway. So yeah.
I mean, this is not a political podcast, but I think it's true to state that a lot of discussions right now from European countries are touching on the subject, right, on boundaries. It's interesting. I was it was a couple of years back. I was part of a Swedish governmental implementation, or more like a pre-sale situation, and they had some requirements, right? So I kind of fell on the requirements, but their requirements was it has to be installed in a local data center, and we had kind of discussed with them, and like why? Because it's going to be very problematic for you to find a good solution when you have this requirement. It's very expensive for a local Swedish, like local government, not government, but local commune, right? And they will know we have to have our data within Swedish boundaries, but you're using Office 365 here, right? And so, yes, so why? Yeah, but it's not stored in Sweden. And so I don't think everyone has like a good understanding of where all of their objects reside, where all the data resides, where all the data centers. I have clients running CRM instances in North Europe and ERP instances in West Europe, and it's kind of spread out, right? Because that's just the way of the world. But I think it's important that everyone has a good understanding before they make the decision. And nowadays you can also migrate, right? You can move between data centers for F&O, at least between regions. And the Sovereign Cloud discussion that comes, that's interpreted as a response from Microsoft to say that, yes, we can definitely cover your regulatory needs as well as your, I was going to say fears, but as you said, it's like mainly driven through regulatory needs, right? But also driven through like, yes, we want to ensure that we control our own data.
Yeah.
So what did the article cover, Johan? I mean, what is Sovereign Cloud from
Yeah.
Microsoft?
So basically, what they are documenting here is that we are going to get. We are not there yet. This is still like the start of a discussion. But what we will get eventually, at the end goal here, is to have 3 different offerings when it comes to Sovereign Cloud. We're not talking about moving your data and putting it in a US cloud. This is not about this. This is about European companies being able to host data in a European data center owned or in some way, shape, or form associated with Microsoft in this case. So there will be 3 different levels. We will have something called a sovereign public cloud. That is basically what we have today. So it's a data center built in Europe, managed by Microsoft, with 2 differences from today, basically. So the first one is called Data Guardian. That means that all the people working in this data center reside in Europe. That means that a US support technician are not by default allowed to get access to European resources in European data centers.
It's governed, right? They can, but that is governed through audit control and a lot.
Yeah. So basically, what will happen, I think, this is now we're in guessing territory. What we think is that there is a solution today called customer lockbox, which means that for every time a support professional needs to get access to your data or to something else, they will be able to ask you, and they will get access to a very highly governed copy of your data in a lockbox. So you as a customer will give explicit access to this support person, and if you don't give access, there is no technical way for them to access the data. The second part is that we will also get a higher level of encryption. So to compare it to something that exists today, it's basically customer managed keys, but for everything. So every tenant in Europe will have customer owned keys in a hopefully secure location. I mean, there are technical solutions where we can store keys in Azure, but without Microsoft getting access to them. So I'm guessing that this is what will be provided, and it's then up to Microsoft to be able to prove that these are secure storage of keys, so that we can trust them. But it's still, we need to trust them.
Yeah. And I mean that might raise just from a normal day-to-day operations with F&O, right? I mean, a lot of the interactions, at least on a higher level or a deeper level, is with the product group, and I mean most of those teams reside in Seattle, right? So if we need to get that. And a lot of the main like first line support technicians are residing in India mainly. So it begs the question how much additional steps will be needed to get to the level where, okay, can we take a shadow copy? Can we gain access to your environment and so forth? And mainly those things. And I know there are already safeguards in place to remove personal data from like these shadow copies and so forth. So I hope that it doesn't become even more of a struggle for, at least in those cases where it's not like R&D, very sensitive data. It's more sales, that type of data, at least from a operational stability perspective.
Yep. So if we apply like a dynamics layer onto this, this basically means right now that as long as we stay in Europe West or Europe North, we will basically not see any difference as customers, except for the customer managed keys part and the European personnel working in the data centers. So that's basically the only difference, and that will be applicable to Dynamics right now. The second version of this is at the other end of the spectrum. It's called Sovereign Private Cloud. So this is basically you running your own cloud in your own basement, but it's managed in the same way as Azure is or Microsoft 365. At the moment, we will have access to email and SharePoint in that implementation mode. But as far as I understand the blog post, the goal is to get basically all of the Microsoft 365 offering available, and also most of the Azure data center offering available. I'm not sure if we will get a complete like feature comparison between a public data center and a private data center. For instance, I mean, if we need to get AI workloads, we need a massive amount of GPUs in your basement.
Yes.
That is a limitation, of course, but it's not that it's not doable. But as I understand it, there are already solutions today like Azure Arc and stuff that means that you can actually you can deploy basically Azure in your data center, and when you go to your Azure portal, the public one, you will see your data center available as one of the data centers where you can deploy workloads. So you basically manage it from the public cloud, but it deploys things in your local cloud.
But that's not a next finish installation, right? That's a huge complexity in running that's running. But and again, it kind of orients towards clients running their own data centers.
So the
already
thing
now.
So the thing is that it is actually, it's not the next finish solution. It's a bit more complicated, but it's actually still a SKU. It's like not working for a month on end to get it working. And as I understand it, once your infrastructure is up and running, deploying workloads on your private cloud is basically as simple as deploying workloads in Azure. Okay. So, and I think that's sort of the whole point of this, is that we need to provide a cloud experience, but on local hardware, on private hardware, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we look at the Dynamics perspective, we have the local business data. We talked to Oscar a while back about local business data, and I mean, this basically run on that architecture.
Yeah, exactly.
On that architecture. So I would say that at least FNO would be able to deploy, not feature complete, because you will never get Dataverse, you will never get Fabric for now, at least. Those workloads are not available in your private data center, as far as I understand. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's far from
complete.
It's far from feature comparable with the cloud, with the public cloud version, but it is absolutely workable. There are customers around the world running this, so it's absolutely a viable solution.
Yeah. But I mean, it's targeted towards a very specific set. The normal finance and operations client, regardless if they're super huge or do not need this, right? Because and I think that's where the discussion is. It's, at least from my perspective, it's very important to understand that in Europe you can still run in West Europe most likely, and if your country has like a legal residency requirement, double check that very thoroughly, because normally it's more like, yes, you have to be able to have a backup of your data within, and that can be done very easily without having to resort to running your own local data center with Azure, right? So I've been in both discussions. One is like super clear, yes, we go full cloud, and it's great with the like boundary controls and the data guardian and so forth. But for anyone not like super scared, it's more about ensuring that you can also have that if you need it for purposes.
Yeah, and that sort of brings us to the third level, which is something called National Partner Cloud. And I mean, that is where we are getting into major guessing territory, because this basically doesn't exist as of now. As far as I've understood, this is basically what we used to have in Germany at some point, where Microsoft basically built a data center that was an Azure data center, but which was owned and managed by T-Mobile in Germany. Unfortunately, the problem with that was that the German data center was never up to date compared to the rest of Europe's data centers, and I think, if I remember correctly, I'm not perfectly sure, but if I remember correctly, this data center was actually closed down a while ago. So as far as I understand, it doesn't exist right now. But as I understand it, this should be the premise of the national partner clouds, that data centers are built, they are managed by a local partner. So think T-Mobile, CGI, whatever. And the idea here is that there should be no legal jurisdiction for any US company to get access to one of the national partner data centers, because they are governed by European laws in that case, or national laws actually for France and Germany and so on. And this is also the part where we get into the discussion around dynamics, because if I don't think that it would be a problem for Microsoft to provide like Microsoft 365 or regular Azure workloads on a partner-owned data center. I am a little more skeptical about the timeline for dynamics on these data centers.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, normally in almost every, if not every, Dynamics implementation, you have a lot of surrounding like applications, tools, logic apps, function apps. You have storage accounts. You have a lot of touching objects around Azure, right? So if you run all of those, that's the question, right? What impact will this have for Dynamics-oriented customers if we want to kind of start to move into this Sovereign Cloud, but you cannot move your main ERP installation? But definitely there will be a timeline on that. And to avoid some of the guesswork here, Johan, we should say that we are trying to reach out to some more experts in the area. We just wanted to have this episode as a conversation from a Dynamics perspective, because I don't think there is a Dynamics specific expert in Sovereign Cloud. Maybe there is, and we'll find one. But...
Yeah, we're looking, but I still think that since most of our customers are using other workloads than Dynamics, they are using Microsoft 365, they are using Azure. I think this is still an interesting thing to discuss, because it's important to understand where this is moving eventually. Yeah. So I think this is really, really important anyway. But as
it is definitely a hot potato. It's a very hot topic that it's important to understand. I mean, coming from a Dynamics or into a Dynamics implementation, the question will be raised in Europe, especially. It's not only GDPR anymore. It's more like local data and those discussions. And at least you need to be very clear that going down the route of local business data, even though that's like really cool, that's not necessarily not something you have to do to be able to control your data. You should have other requirements for that.
Exactly, and also One thing that is important in this is that there has lately been one more aspect of this that hasn't been discussed, that we haven't discussed, and that haven't been discussed previously, and that's the all of the tariffs that are being implemented around the world, which means that all of a sudden your bill for using an American-owned data center might be raised for just overnight, basically. And I mean, the whole point of doing a public cloud implementation is cost. I mean, you have a subscription-based cost, which means that you actually have a lower cost every single month, but you have a cost every month, so you don't have to invest in your own hardware and things. So it's a different payment method, but it also means that you need to be able to trust the pricing, because I mean we know both you and I have been in the discussion when Microsoft or any other cloud provider has decided that all of a sudden they will raise the price by 10%.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't think that the tariffs will be 10% in this case. It will probably be more, looking at the other tariffs that have been implemented, and that will hit quite hard on the data centers. So
yeah, absolutely, and that discussion will be held together with kind of the data guardian discussion of how do we actually give access to personnel outside of Europe, because we want to do that to get the help we need in many cases. So it's a combined thing, a combined effort, and a combined discussion. But it's complicated, right? So we'll try to find someone who can shine some more light than this article has done so far. But it's a very interesting subject,
especially from a Dynamics perspective. Being able to understand where Dynamics is going, because I mean, we have already seen today that we can get access to the CRM part of Dynamics in both Norway and Sweden.
Yeah.
But the problem is that we are only getting access to the CRM part. We are not getting access to a F&O part. We are not getting access to customer insights.
Yeah.
So it's still a limited feature set. And what I would also like to raise is that even though a data center has a certain workload, all data centers are not created equal. I mean, if you compare West Europe, North Europe to the rest of the European data centers, because there are a lot of them that you can choose, the update cadence is not the same as in Europe and North and West Europe, because North and West Europe are the ones that have the highest frequency of updates.
Yeah, they get the latest and greatest, and because they are the biggest. I mean, from a European perspective. But
and that's important to understand that as well. So if you choose another data center, you might end up in a situation where you will get access to a feature that you require much later than the rest of the data centers.
Yeah. So maybe to wrap things up here, what we're saying is that you should always, in Europe, when based in Europe, you should always select West Europe, pretty much, unless you have a lot of other reasons. Then you need to look at all of the things we said here about Sovereign Cloud and choose your data center wisely. And there are changes coming when it comes to your local data, who gets access to your data, who can help you out with your data, and so forth. But we, at this moment at least, we don't know yet the impact of Dynamics, but it's important to keep it, to stay up to date with it.
Yep. And with that, I think that we are done for today. I think we will be able to return to this hopefully in a not too distant future when we know more. Yeah, with the guest.
Me and Johan guessing a lot about
the
impact of this.
Yep. So thank you very much for listening, and have a nice time to the next. Bye bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.